wit inspirations of the 2-year-olds. All infants appear to have an impertinent and disagreeable fashion nowadays of saying smart things on most occasions that offer, and especially on occasion when they ought not to be saying anything at all. Judging by the average published specimens of smart sayings, the rising generation of children are little better than idiots, and the parents must surely be but little better than the children, for in most cases they are the publishers of the sunbursts of infantile imbecility which dazzle us from the pages of our periodicals. I may seem to speak with some heat, not to say a suspicion of personal spite, and I do admit that it nettles me to hear about so many gifted infants in these days, and remember that I seldom said anything smart when I was a child. I tried it once or twice, but it was not popular. The family were not expecting brilliant remarks from me, and so they snubbed me sometimes and spanked me the rest. But it makes my flesh creep and my blood run cold to think what might have happened to me if I had dared to utter some of the smart things of this generation's 4-year-olds where my father could hear me. To have simply skinned me alive and considered his duty at an end would have seemed to him criminal leniency toward one so sinning. He was a stern, unsmiling man and hated all forms of precocity. If I had said some of the things I have referred to and said them in his hearing, he would have destroyed me. He would, indeed, he would, provided the opportunity remained with him. But it would not, for I would have had judgment enough to take some strychnine first and say my smart thing afterward. The fair record of my life has been tarnished by just one pun. My father overheard that, and he hunted me over 4 or 5 townships seeking to take my life. If I had been full grown, of course he would have been right, but child as I was, I could not know how wicked a thing I had done. I made one of those remarks ordinarily called smart things before that, but it was not a pun. Still, it came near causing a serious rupture between my father and myself. My father and mother, my uncle Ephraim and his wife, and 1 or 2 others were present, and the conversation turned on a name for me. I was lying there trying some India rubber rings of various patterns and endeavoring to make a selection, for I was tired of trying to cut my teeth on people's fingers and wanted to get hold of something that would enable me to hurry the thing through and get something else. Did you ever notice what a nuisance it was cutting your teeth on your nurse's finger, or how backbreaking and tiresome it was trying to cut them on your big toe? And did you never get out of patience and wish your teeth were in Jericho long before you got them half cut? To me it seems as if these things happened yesterday, and they did to some children. But I digress. I was lying there trying the India rubber rings. I remember looking at the clock and noticing that in an hour and 25 minutes I would be 2 weeks old, and thinking how little I had done to merit the blessings that were so unsparingly lavished upon me. My father said, "Abraham is a good name." My grandfather was named Abraham. My mother said, "Abraham is a good name." Very well, let us have Abraham for one of his names. I said, "Abraham suits the subscriber." My father frowned. My mother looked pleased. My aunt said, "What a little darling it is." My father said, "Isaac is a good name, and Jacob is a good name." My mother assented and said, "No names are better. Let us add Isaac and Jacob to his names." I said, "All right, Isaac and Jacob are good enough for yours truly. Pass me that rattle, if you please. I can't chew India rubber rings all day." Not a soul made a memorandum of these sayings of mine for publication. I saw that, and did it myself, else they would have been utterly lost. So far from meeting with a generous encouragement like other children when developing intellectually, I was now furiously scowled upon by my father. My mother looked grieved and anxious, and even my aunt had about her an expression of seeming to think that maybe I had gone too far. I took a vicious bite out of an India rubber ring and covertly broke broke the rattle over the kitten's head but said nothing. Presently my father said, "Samuel is a very excellent name." I saw that trouble was coming. Nothing could prevent it. I laid down my rattle over the side of the cradle. I dropped my uncle's silver watch, the clothes brush, the toy dog, my tin soldier, the nutmeg grater, and other matters which I was accustomed to examine and meditate upon and make pleasant noises with and bang and batter and break when I needed wholesome entertainment. Then I put on my little frock and my little bonnet and took my pygmy shoes in one hand and my licorice in the other and climbed out on the floor. I said to myself, "Now, if the worst comes to worst, I am ready." Then I said aloud in a firm voice, "Father, I cannot wear the name of Samuel, my son." "Father, I mean it. I cannot." "Why?" "Father, I have an invincible antipathy to that name." "My son, this is unreasonable. Many great and good men have been named Samuel." "Sir, I have yet to hear of the first instance." "What? There was Samuel the prophet. Was not he great and good?" "Not so very, my son. With his own voice the Lord called him." "Yes, sir, and had to call him a couple times before he could come. And then I sallied forth, and that stern old man sallied forth after me. He overtook me at noon the following day, and when the interview was over I had acquired the name of Samuel and a thrashing and other useful information, and by means of this compromise my father's wrath was appeased and a misunderstanding bridged over which might have become a permanent rupture if I had chosen to be unreasonable. But just judging by this episode, what would my father have done to me if I had ever uttered in his hearing one of the flat, sickly things these 2-year-olds say in print nowadays? In my opinion, there would have been a case of infanticide in our family. The father, the man whose story is here to be told, was the wealthiest and most influential person in his parish. His name was Thord Overas. He appeared in the priest's study one day, tall and earnest. "I have gotten a son," said he, "and I wish to present him for baptism. What shall his name be?" "Finn, after my father." And the sponsors, they were mentioned and proved to be the best men and women of Thord's relations in the parish. "Is there anything else?" inquired the priest, and looked up. The peasant hesitated a little. "I should like very much to have him baptized by himself," said he, finally. "That is to say on a weekday, next Saturday at 12 o'clock noon." "Is there anything else?" inquired the priest. "There is nothing else," and the peasant twirled his cap as though he were about to go. Then the priest rose. "There is yet this, however," said he, and walking toward Thord, he took him by the hand and looked gravely into his eyes. "God grant that the child may become a blessing to you." One day 16 years later, Thord stood once more in the priest's study. "Really, you carry your age astonishingly well, Thord," said the priest, for he saw no change whatever in the man. "That is because I have no troubles," replied Thord. To this the priest said nothing, but after a while he asked, "What is your pleasure this evening?" "I have come this evening about that son of mine who is to be confirmed tomorrow. He is a bright boy. I did not wish to pay the priest until I heard what number the boy would have when he takes his place in church tomorrow. He will stand number 1, so I have heard, and here are $10 for the priest. Is there anything else I can do for you?" inquired the priest, fixing his eyes on Thord. "There is nothing else." Thord went out. 8 years more rolled by, and then one day a noise was heard outside of the priest's study, for many men were approaching, and at their head was Thord, who entered first. The priest looked up and recognized him. "You come well attended this evening, Thord. I am here to request that the banns may be published for my son. He is about to marry Karen Stoledin, daughter of Gudmund, who stands here beside me." "Why, that is the richest girl in the parish." "So they say," replied the peasant, stroking back his hair with one hand. The priest sat a while as if in deep thought, then entered the names in his book without making any comments, and the men wrote their signatures signatures underneath. Todd laid $3 on the table. "One is all I am to have," said the priest. "I know that very well, but he is my only child. I want to do it handsomely." The priest took the money. "This is now the third time, Todd, that you have come here on your son's account. But now I am through with him," said Todd, and folding up his pocketbook he said farewell and walked away. The men slowly followed him. A fortnight later, the father and son were rowing across the lake one calm, still day to Stolliden to make arrangements for the wedding. "This thwart is not secure," said the son, and stood up to straighten the seat on which he was sitting. At the same moment the board he was standing on slipped from under him. He threw out his arms, uttered a shriek, and fell overboard. "Take hold of the oar," shouted the father, springing to his feet and holding out the oar. But when the son had made a couple of efforts he grew stiff. "Wait a moment," cried the father, and began to row toward his son. Then the son rolled over on his back, gave his father one long look, and sunk. Todd could scarcely believe it. He held the boat still and stared at the spot where his son had gone down, as though he must surely come to the surface again. There rose some bubbles, then some more, and finally one large one that burst, and the lake lay there as smooth and bright as a mirror again. For 3 days and 3 nights people saw the father rowing round and round the spot without taking either food or sleep. He was dragging the lake for the body of his son, and toward morning of the 3rd day he found it and carried it in his arms up over the hills to his guard. It might have been about a year from that day when the priest, late one autumn evening, heard someone in the passage outside of the door, carefully trying to find the latch. The priest opened the door, and in walked a tall, thin man with bored form and white hair. The priest looked long at him before he recognized him. It was Todd. "Are you out walking so late?" said the priest, and stood still in front of him. "Ah, yes, it is late," said Todd, and took a seat. The priest sat down also, as though waiting. A long silence followed. At last Todd said, "I have something with me that I should like to give to the poor. I want it to be invested as a legacy in my son's name." He rose, laid some money on the table, and sat down again. The priest counted it. "It is a great deal of money," said he. "It is half the price of my guard. I sold it today." The priest sat long in silence. At last he asked, but gently, "What do you propose to do now, Todd?" "Something better." They sat there for a while, Todd with downcast eyes, the priest with his eyes fixed on Todd. Presently the priest said, slowly and softly, "I think your son has at last brought you a true blessing." "Yes, I think so myself," said Todd, looking up, while 2 big tears coursed slowly down his cheeks. "An uncomfortable bed. One autumn I went to spend the hunting season with some friends in a chateau in Picardy. My friends were fond of practical jokes. I do not care to know people who are not. When I arrived, they gave me a princely reception, which at once awakened suspicion in my mind. They fired off rifles, embraced me, made much of me, as if they expected to have great fun at my expense. I said to myself, 'Look out, old ferret. They have something in store for you.' During the dinner the mirth was excessive, exaggerated. In fact, I thought, here are people who have more than their share of amusement, and apparently without reason. They must have planned some good joke. Assuredly, I am to be the victim of the joke. Attention! During the entire evening everyone laughed in an exaggerated fashion. I scented a practical joke in the air, as a dog scents game. But what was it? I was watchful, restless. I did not let a word, or a meaning, or a gesture escape me. Everyone seemed to me an object of suspicion, and I even looked distrustfully at the faces of the servants. They are struck for retiring. ring, and the whole household came to escort me to my room. Why? They called to me, "Good night." I entered the apartment, shut the door, and remained standing without moving a single step, holding the wax candle in my hand. I heard laughter and whispering in the corridor. Without doubt, they were spying on me. I cast a glance round the walls, the furniture, the ceiling, the hangings, the floor. I saw nothing to justify suspicion. I heard persons moving about outside my door. I had no doubt they were looking through the keyhole. An idea came into my head. My candle may suddenly go out and leave me in darkness. Then I went across to the mantelpiece and lighted all the wax candles that were on it. After that, I cast another glance around me without discovering anything. I advanced with short steps, carefully examining the apartment. Nothing. I inspected every article, one after the other. Still nothing. I went over to the window. The shutters, large wooden shutters, were open. I shut them with great care and then drew the curtains, enormous velvet curtains, and placed a chair in front of them so as to have nothing to fear from outside. Then I cautiously sat down. The armchair was solid. I did not venture to get into the bed. However, the night was advancing and I ended by coming to the conclusion that I was foolish. If they were spying on me, as I supposed they must, while waiting for the success of the joke they had been preparing for me, have been laughing immoderately at my terror. So I made up my mind to go to bed. But the bed was particularly suspicious looking. I pulled at the curtains. They seemed to be secure. All the same, there was danger. I was going perhaps to receive a cold shower both from overhead, or perhaps the moment I stretched myself out to find myself sinking to the floor with my mattress. I searched in my memory for all the practical jokes of which I ever had experience, and I did not want to be caught. Oh, certainly not. Certainly not. Then I suddenly bethought myself of a precaution which I considered ensured safety. I caught hold of the side of the mattress gingerly and very slowly drew it toward me. It came away, followed by the sheet and the rest of the bedclothes. I dragged all these objects into the very middle of the room, facing the entrance door. I made my bed over again as best I could at some distance from the suspected bedstead and the corner, which had filled me with such anxiety. Then I extinguished all the candles and, groping my way, I slipped under the bedclothes. For at least another hour I remained awake, starting at the slightest sound. Everything seemed quiet in the chateau. I fell asleep. I must have been in a deep sleep for a long time, but all of a sudden I was awakened with a start by the fall of a heavy body tumbling right on top of my own, and at the same time I received on my face, on my neck, and on my chest a burning liquid which made me utter a howl of pain, and a dreadful noise as if a sideboard laden with plates and dishes had fallen down almost deafened me. I was smothering beneath the weight that was crushing me and preventing me from moving. I stretched out my hand to find out what was the nature of this object. I felt a face, a nose, and whiskers. Then, with all my strength, I launched out a blow at this face. But I immediately received a hail of cuffings which made me jump straight out of the soaked sheets and rush in my nightshirt into the corridor, the door of which I found open. Oh, heavens! It was broad daylight. The noise brought my friends hurrying into my apartment, and we found, sprawling over my improvised bed, the dismayed valet who, while bringing me my morning cup of tea, had tripped over this obstacle in the middle of the floor and fallen on his stomach, spilling my breakfast over my face in spite of himself. The precautions I had taken in closing the shutters and going to sleep in the middle of the room had only brought about the practical joke I had been trying to avoid. Oh, how they all laughed that day. A fable. Once upon a time an artist who had painted a small and very beautiful picture placed it so so that he could see it in the mirror. He said, "This doubles the distance and softens it, and it is twice as lovely as it was before." The animals out in the woods heard of this through the house cat, who was greatly admired by them because he was so learned and so refined and civilized and so polite and hybrid, and could tell them so much which they didn't know before and were not certain about afterward. They were much excited about this new piece of gossip, and they asked questions so as to get at a full understanding of it. They asked what a picture was, and the cat explained. "It is a flat thing," he said, "wonderfully flat, marvelously flat, enchantingly flat and elegant, and oh, so beautiful." That excited them almost to a frenzy, and they said they would give the world to see it. Then the bear asked, "What is it that makes it so beautiful?" "It is the looks of it," said the cat. This filled them with admiration and uncertainty, and they were more excited than ever. Then the cow asked, "What is a mirror?" "It is a hole in the wall," said the cat. "You look in it, and there you see the picture, and it is so dainty and charming and ethereal and inspiring in its unimaginable beauty that your head turns round and round, and you almost swoon with ecstasy." The ass had not said anything as yet. He now began to throw doubts. He said there had never been anything as beautiful as this before, and probably wasn't now. He said that when it took a whole basketful of sesquipedalian adjectives to whoop up a thing of beauty, it was time for suspicion. It was easy to see that these doubts were having an effect upon the animals, so the cat went off offended. The subject was dropped for a couple of days, but in the meantime curiosity was taking a fresh start. There was a revival of interest perceptible. Then the animals assailed the ass for spoiling what could possibly have been a pleasure to them on a mere suspicion that the picture was not beautiful, without any evidence that such was the case. The ass was not troubled. He was calm, and said there was one way to find out who was in the right, himself or the cat. He would go and look in that hole and come back and tell what he found there. The animals felt relieved and grateful and asked him to go at once, which he did, but he did not know where he ought to stand, and so, through error, he stood between the picture and the mirror. The result was that the picture had no chance and didn't show up. He returned home and said, "The cat lied. There was nothing in that hole but an ass. There wasn't a sign of a flat thing visible. It was a handsome ass and friendly, but just an ass and nothing more." The elephant asked, "Did you see it good and clear? Were you close to it?" "I saw it good and clear, O Hathi, king of beasts. I was so close that I touched noses with it." "This is very strange," said the elephant. "The cat was always truthful before, as far as we could make out. Let another witness try. Go, Balu, look in the hole and come and report." So the bear went. When he came back, he said, "Both the cat and the ass have lied. There was nothing in the hole but a bear." Great was the surprise and puzzlement of the animals. Each was now anxious to make the test himself and get at the straight truth. The elephant sent them one at a time. First, the cow. She found nothing in the hole but a cow. The tiger found nothing in it but a tiger. The lion found nothing in it but a lion. The leopard found nothing in it but a leopard. The camel found a camel and nothing more. Then Hathi was wroth and said he would have the truth if he had to go and fetch it himself. When he returned, he abused his whole subjectory for liars and was in an unappeasable fury with the moral and mental blindness of the cat. He said that anybody but a nearsighted fool could see that there was nothing in the hole but an elephant. Moral by the cat. You can find in a text whatever you bring, if you will stand between it and the mirror of your imagination. You may not see your ears, but they will be there. George Washington's Boyhood Rules. George George wrote out 110 rules which were to guide him in act and speech at home and abroad. Some few of these I will give you, that you may see at how young an age this boy set out to train himself and fit himself for the high place he was to fill. It almost seems as if he must have known the high rank he was to take, but this could not be. His soul was fixed on high things, he had no low tastes, and he was led by the hand of God. Here are some of the rules that George Washington took as the guide of his youth. In the presence of others, sing not to yourself with a humming noise, nor drum with your fingers or feet. Sleep not when others speak, sit not when others stand, speak not when you should hold your peace, walk not when others stop. Turn not your back to others when speaking, jug not the table or desk on which another reads or writes, lean not on any one. Read no letters, books, or papers in company, but when there is a need for doing it, you must ask leave. Come not near the books or writings of any one so as to read them, unless asked to do so, nor give your opinion of them unskid. Also look not nigh when another is writing a letter. In writing or speaking, give to each person his due title according to his rank and the custom of the place. When a man does all he can, though it succeeds not well, blame not him that did it. Be slow to believe evil reports of anyone. Be modest in your dress and seek to suit nature rather than to win admiration. Keep to the fashion of your equals, such as are civil and orderly with respect to times and places. Slay not the peacock, looing all about you to see if you be well decked. If your shoes fit well, your stockings sit neatly, and your clothes handsomely. Make friends with those of good character, if you care for your own reputation, for it is better to be alone than in bad company. Speak not of doleful things in time of mirth, nor at the table. Speak not of mournful things as death and wounds, and if others mention them, change, if you can, the discourse. Utter not base and foolish things mongst grave and learned men, nor hard questions or subjects among the ignorant, nor things hard to be believed. Be not forward, but friendly and courteous, are the first to salute, hear, and answer, and be not pensive when it is time to converse. Gaze not on the marks or blemishes of others, and ask not how they came. Think before you speak, pronounce not imperfectly, nor bring out your words too hastily, but orderly and distinctly. Treat with men at fit times about business, and whisper not in the company of others. Be not curious to know the affairs of others, nor go near to those that speak in private. Undertake not to do what you cannot perform, but be careful to keep your promise. Speak not evil of the absent, for it is unjust. Make no show of taking great delight in your food. Feed not with greediness. Cut your bread with a knife. Lean not on the table, neither find fault with what you eat. When you speak of God, let it be gravely and in reverence. Honor and obey your parents, although they be poor. Let your amusements be manful, not sinful. Labor to keep alive in your breast that little spark of celestial fire called conscience. It is not known where George found these rules he took so much pains to write out, but it is plain that he set great store by them and made use of them throughout his whole life. Borrowing a match. You might think that borrowing a match upon the street is a simple thing, but any man who has ever tried it will assure you that it is not, and will be prepared to swear to the truth of my experience of the other evening. I was standing on the corner of the street with a cigar that I wanted to light. I had no match. I waited till a decent, ordinary-looking man came along. Then I said, "Excuse me, sir, but could you oblige me with the loan down of a match. A match? He said. Why, certainly. Then he unbuttoned his overcoat and put his hand in the pocket of his waistcoat. I know I have one, he went on, and I'd almost swear it's in the bottom pocket. Or, hold on, though, I guess it may be in the top. Just wait till I put these parcels down on the sidewalk. Oh, don't trouble, I said. It's really of no consequence. Oh, it's no trouble. I'll have it in a minute. I know there must be one in here somewhere. He was digging his fingers into his pockets as he spoke. But you see, this isn't the waistcoat I saw that the man was getting excited about it. Well, never mind, I protested. If that isn't the waistcoat that you generally, why, it doesn't matter. Hold on, now, hold on, the man said. I've got one of the cursed things in here somewhere. I guess it must be in with my watch. No, it's not there either. Wait till I try my coat. If that confounded tailor only knew enough to make a pocket so that a man could get at it. He was getting pretty well worked up now. He had thrown down his walking stick and was plunging at his pockets with his teeth set. It's that cursed young boy of mine, he hissed. This comes of his fooling in my pockets. By gad, perhaps I won't warm him up when I get home. Say, I'll bet that it's in my hip pocket. You just hold up the tail of my overcoat a second till I... No, I protested again. Please don't take all this trouble. It really doesn't matter. I'm sure you needn't take off your overcoat, and oh, pray don't throw away your letters and things in the snow like that and tear out your pockets by the roots. Please don't trample over your overcoat and put your feet through the parcels. I do hate to hear you swearing at your little boy with that peculiar whine in your voice. Please don't tear your clothes so savagely. Suddenly the man gave a grunt of exultation and drew his hand up from inside the lining of his coat. I've got it, he cried. Here you are. Then he brought it out under the light. It was a toothpick. Yielding to the impulse of the moment, I pushed him under the wheels of a trolley car and ran. The little thief in the pantry. Mother dear, said a little mouse one day, I think the people in our house must be very kind, don't you? They leave such nice things for us in the larder. There was a twinkle in the mother's eye as she replied, well, my child, no doubt they are very well in their way, but I don't think they are quite as fond of us as you seem to think. Now remember, Grey Whiskers, I have absolutely forbidden you to put your nose above the ground unless I am with you. For kind as the people are, I shouldn't be at all surprised if they tried to catch you. Grey Whiskers twitched his tail with scorn. He was quite sure he knew how to take care of himself, and he didn't mean to trot meekly after his mother's tail all his life. So as soon as she had curled herself up for an afternoon nap, he stole away and scampered across the pantry shelves. Oh, here was something particularly good today. A large iced cake stood far back upon the shelf, and Grey Whiskers licked his lips as he sniffed it. Across the top of the cake there were words written in pink sugar, but as Grey Whiskers could not read, he did not know that he was nibbling at little Miss Ethel's birthday cake. But he did feel a little guilty when he heard his mother calling. Off he ran and was back in the nest again by the time his mother had finished rubbing her eyes after her nap. She took Grey Whiskers up to the pantry then, and when she saw the hole in the cake she seemed a little annoyed. Some mouse has evidently been here before us, she said, but of course she never guessed that it was her own little son. The next day the naughty little mouse again popped up to the pantry when his mother was asleep, but at first he could find nothing at all to eat, though there was a most delicious smell of toasted cheese. Presently he found a dear little wooden house, and there hung the cheese just inside it. In ran Grey Whiskers, but oh, click went the little wooden house, and Mousie was caught fast in a trap. When the morning came, the cook, who had set the trap, lifted it from the shelf and then called a pretty little girl to come and see the thief who had eaten her cake. "What are you going to do with him?" asked Ethel. "Why, drown him, my dear, to be sure." The tears came into the little girl's pretty blue eyes. "You didn't know it was stealing, did you, Mousie dear?" she said. "No," squeaked Grey Whiskers sadly. "Indeed, I didn't." Cook's back was turned for a moment, and in that moment tender-hearted little Ethel lifted the lid of the trap, and out popped Mousie. Oh, how quickly he ran home to his mother, and how she comforted and petted him until he began to forget his fright, and then she made him promise never to disobey her again, and you may be sure he never did.